called out my name. Rather, it can at least be said that he called out Evan Kennedy. He called out Evan Kennedy twice, in fact, and that was the start of likeness and familiarity. As I was like most things, creeping and crawling and in between, as I was familiar to some. And here I realized I was dressed fine, perhaps even better than fine, because I was not being called as a pilgrim or the starting third baseman for the Giants, though they could sure use one. I was only being called as a decent poet. Weren't I decent then among them? I was descending, doing really indecent things. I was in some back room on Folsom Street wearing my dog mask, doing really indecent things among the like and the familiar as they were making what I could only call noise. In my fantastic jacket and cap, in their fantastic jackets and caps. And I was in trouble. Always these ands unto my state. That I'm trying here to make a paradise, however tenuous, that I'm trying here to make a changing and living territory. I will force a change in your taste, in that man that you've become so fond of. I realize this remains beyond me, but remains. It stays far from me, but it stays, that it holds there. I can always go back to being human. They can go back to being kind in their own kind, herd in their own herd, and on this very earth, or just over its surface. How should each reply? How civil? How bestial? And getting that rather well while keeping off the sun, rather off that subject. And far from growing fur or fangs, I think I'm far from those, but close to loving coats and caps, while keeping off the sea, while keeping the gift that is their sound, where but about me and not afraid to be civil. I'm listening with my body, so attentive toward that order and into it, while keeping above the squalor. Not afraid to be civil, yes, it is a brief loan that is this body, that is mentioning their order. If you could hear not to ask, if you could touch not to tell, and silence those images in back of your heads, those images of earth and sea and air and the very good men within them, aren't there still very good men with me, or in this century? Isn't there still a very good man for me, or did I really just blow my last chance? I'm here to distill you from appearance, the eyes of your hearts on my heart, the eyes of your teeth on my teeth, the eyes of your knees on my knees, the eyes of your toes on my toes. You get the idea. With your bodies as lovely earthly habitations. Aren't your bodies lovely earthly habitations, temporary habitations through this foreordained experiment in what but suffering? Question mark? Yes, I have found it to be suffering, period. As you coughed up froth and later brought me your lungs, rather songs. Your body's no earthly corruption. Won't you bump into your songs when out there and make it adventure, as I've made this a kind of adventure, in where but San Francisco. Beat pig at the powerhouse on Folsom Street. Does he look dirty? Or is the fog just bad? This is what we ask in the city. Does he look dirty, or are my eyes remote? I'm let in as a guest here, and I'm fine with this. Aren't I just another tender guest on earth? There's this throbbing from areas on me that I earlier considered detritus, and isn't it mighty of us to still put up with this country? I'm asking my doggy pal, isn't paradise vicious? I'm asking my piggy pal, isn't our sweat a bit thicker? And that of other fluids too. And isn't it good that our native country thinks we're degenerate? Isn't it good for us that Carolina thinks we're degenerate? What I mean here is that we, my kind, has the opportunity to express gentility amidst countless gestures of others' cruelty imposed onto us, and a degree of literacy for the shorthand of sensation that is this poem. St. Peter's Catholic Church on Alabama Street in the Mission. No. It would not bother me if they turned your church into mosques. It would not bother me if they turned your mosques into factories for things to assist a bicyclist. I wouldn't surrender such a factory for a restaurant or paradise. A restaurant that does not have to close, a paradise that would actually admit me. Such would be my demand here, a paradise now and an eradication of all illness, and as Frank O'Hara demanded, no more dying. That there is to be no more labor henceforth, but cycling. Must that be thought as one? Through praise, I'm drawing breath into the matter of my kind. However we're depicted, our biology continues to speed along the Earth's surface, and after their ridicule, our veins start to run a little roguish. I have my city boots on, so it would not bother me to see your nation toppled, turned to a wildlife preserve. I would not be bothered to write this, to speak this once more, as harmonizing against the aggression of my surroundings is to build this garden of many pleasing species. Since I've been known to bloom from the peril I have taken, since I've been known to thus create worth. Pig circus. Pig circus. It is beneath me when I am told that these riot cops are to be met and won over as men. I have this idea they are to be met and transfigured as silence, in the way that my day-to-day has been shot through with it, as I am rallying toward muffled triumph. And by triumph, I mean in the Civil War my anatomy has waged within me. My bones will hold. This is the lyric my body emotes toward unbalanced belief. I am self-preserving here by a really fierce passivity, kind of like a sissy. Francis of Assisi. So Cedar gave me a little weed, and I smoked it. And the strangest thing happened. I began to feel a little ornery, a little grouchy, like I wanted to be babied for once. I was tired of being the big spoon. And I realized I started sucking my gut anytime cute boys walk past, which is a recent development for me. There's this Lady Gaga song playing, and she's saying, Jesus is the new black. It's this song called I'm in Fashion, but I mishear it as I'm in fashion, which is this classic reply from black-clad guys to the nightclub question, so what do you do? So what do you do? I'm in fashion. Whereas if you hear that in San Francisco, it means they're kind of shelving Jeffrey Bean collared shirts at Nordstrom Rack. How dirty. How many of you have touched this body that's become so berserk with lust? Twist and thrust, I will thrust and screw. You'll give me a bad review. I'm feeling as though I should hide my face now, like the black neoprene mask of my new doggy pal. It's Black Saturday on Folsom Street. So I'm put in charge of him, and he has this black dog mask over his head, and this leather harness, and a skin-tight latex sheath around his genitals. And all the bears are making the classic Folsom Street jokes like, your dog is so well behaved, how do you like to discipline your dog? You should get your dog fixed or he'll spray everywhere. And I realized I need to start issuing commands here, but my dog is having a hard time understanding himself through this mask, which is a bit of a flaw in the design. So I have to curve my ear toward his doggy snout, and he has to curve his dog ear to my human mouth. He's nice about it, but he refuses to go on all fours for me. He says he left his knee pads at home. And I think about this kind of interspecies alliance we've developed, this gesture toward the peaceable kingdom, which is something I'd been working toward in my poems until I broke down last December, I paused, aroused and wowed. I think this kind of black is both new and classic, like the new and classic black Prada sneakers of my long-gone hysterical pillow princess, the one on Allen Street. I should have pinched them. A spoiled dog's loyalty declares itself at its keeper's feet, but at that level it is no slander toward beauty's name. Let us in. To balance as though on earth, as though at an address all know, as at an address of wolves, of bears, to those bipedal and dale. To win that balance in valley rather unbecoming and already elsewhere. Already illumined with reason. Illumined magnificent bestial element, I am sent here without defect to ask let us in. Sans fault or head lopped off, but rather with my head on well. Past alligators, past anteaters, of cemeteries and sewers that address elsewhere. And failing that, I will take a lesser paradise as long as it is lesser by just a hair. A family, a minion, to translate toward that balance I have one last chance to. At little sea, at little land, a beloved balance apportioning time as I of the city who demands to. Let us in. Made to exceed beasts, I'm taking all that's made to exceed them. Exceed them in warmth, in swiftness, and charm. And when on your way, you hear this warm and swift and charming voice, it might be a voice that's mine. A voice that's mine that's asking whether this or whether that can aid me in exceeding all these beasts, all, as I'm asking on my way, can it be made then taken, yes, taken then shown, yes, said, shown then exceed all beasts, as I stay warm, swift, and rather charming. And rather warm, how my home includes what I like keeping, and rather swift, how my way includes what I like seeing, and rather charming, how this voice of mine includes what I like speaking wants you beasts to exceed. Let us in. For you ghouls to be moved, for you beasts to be pieced, for you lads to be laid. Cantico del Sole after Francis of Assisi. Francis called the fog God's creature in fear and amity. Fire could speak to me about how your black Prada kicks tried stamping it out, but I still wouldn't know you from Francis or those dead to law. I'm on this bicycle here, lowly yet manifold in dimness. Francis called the dirt God's creature, though in tears and fealty. Beer bust dances, the classics widely read, our confraternity edged by death decades ago, in this town that's named after Francis, from whom I don't know you, but I still harbor promise. Francis called the wind God's creature, though in slyness and solace. He sang through the state in the 80s, there was always an active river at his back. Fish could speak to me about how your eager bonhomie addressed the presence of their lives, but I still wouldn't know you from Francis, those dead to law, or the black bloc. Francis called the moon God's creature, though in shock and hunger, facing ridicule and wonder, he sang through town, and Francis was actually mugged when mistaken for a troubadour. It is true that more poets could speak to me about how your sounded name has not stopped soothing the sensations within my dominion, but I still wouldn't know you from Francis, those dead to law, the black bloc, or any of his other resemblances. Francis called the sun God's creature from love, and the promise that his likenesses would adopt this eponymous town. on terra firmament, even uncounted, I will find again my resemblances. Again once gotten, yes, gotten and once prized. It isn't simply keeping alive that I've invested my remaining wages. Aside from the gallons of cum I've ingested and thread of a style I serve. As I will find again my resemblances, rather, I'm going to beg my brain to, since I'm still uncounted on terra firmament, as I'm still of some inexplicable anatomy, one that has sure gotten fond of me. And to be of service to the centuries below me, so I will put it there, and with care keep this soul of mine in the clothes that it chose. I tried and meant this a terra firmament. I tried and meant this paradise enough, so I kept tough, but lenient. I tried and meant this, however uncountry, and listen, I've had to adapt to this culture of one. Thanks, Brett. All right, thanks for the marvelous reading. Thanks for this homecoming.